Spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing from society because Jung discovered something profound. When you become genuinely conscious, staying engaged with unconscious social patterns becomes psychologically unsustainable. But this withdrawal serves a specific purpose. It's temporary recharging that allows awakened individuals to return and offer authentic connection to those ready for deeper relationships. There's a mass exodus happening that most people don't recognize. The most psychologically developed individuals in your workplace, your social circles, your family, they're quietly stepping back, not from anger or superiority, but from what Jung called consciousness fatigue. Jung predicted this pattern over a century ago. He understood that psychological awakening creates what I call dimensional incompatibility. You're operating from a different level of awareness than the collective social environment. And maintaining that consciousness while surrounded by unconscious patterns requires enormous psychological energy. If you've been feeling the pull to withdraw, to need more solitude, to find social interaction draining in ways it never used to be, Jung would say you're not becoming antisocial. You're following an archetypal pattern that every individuating person must navigate. The consciousness burden. Why awakening creates isolation. Psychological development doesn't make life easier, it makes it more complex. When you begin seeing unconscious patterns operating in yourself and others, you can't unsee them. This creates what Jung's private journals describe as the weight of seeing. Picture yourself at a dinner party where everyone's having animated political discussions, but you've done enough inner work to recognize that most passionate political opinions are really psychological projections. People externalizing their internal conflicts onto social issues. You can see how each person's childhood wounds are shaping their worldview, how their unintegrated shadow determines their enemies. You're not judging them. You've been there yourself, but you can no longer participate in the unconscious drama because you see the underlying psychological dynamics at play. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But his personal correspondence reveals the profound loneliness this brings. You're awake in a room full of people talking in their sleep. Jung's own psychological crisis taught him this directly. As his consciousness expanded during his confrontation with the unconscious, normal social interaction became increasingly unbearable, not from arrogance, but from the sheer energetic effort required to bridge different levels of awareness. This explains why awakened people often describe feeling like aliens in their own social environments. They're speaking a different psychological language, seeing different dimensions of reality, operating from fundamentally different assumptions about what's real and what matters. Every conversation demands you pretend you don't see what you see, don't understand what's really happening beneath surface interactions. The translation effort becomes exhausting. The energy drain of unconscious environments. When you're conscious, you become what Jung's patient files describe as an unconscious material processor. You're no longer just managing your own psychological content. You're automatically picking up, filtering, and processing the unconscious projections, shadows, and emotional residue that others are leaking. Think about what happens energetically when a conscious person enters an unconscious space. Others' projected emotions feel like your own emotions. Shadow material people avoid in themselves becomes visible to you. Persona performances everyone maintains create psychological static. Collective anxiety about unspoken topics saturates the environment. Jung termed this psychological contamination in his clinical notes. Your heightened sensitivity, which serves you well in conscious environments, becomes a liability in unconscious ones. Elena, a therapist who'd completed extensive shadow work, experienced mysterious exhaustion after team meetings. Through analysis, she realized she was unconsciously processing not just her own material, but the unspoken tensions, projections, and shadow dynamics of her entire team. She wasn't trying to fix anyone. Her consciousness had simply become so refined that unconscious material felt like psychological static she couldn't filter out. But there's another layer Jung's correspondence reveals. When you've touched your authentic self, performing social personas becomes genuinely painful. Before awakening, you could unconsciously play whatever role the situation required. After awakening, returning to persona performance creates what Jung privately called existential nausea. You're in board meetings pretending your corporate persona matters when you know it's just a mask. You're at family gatherings playing roles that stopped fitting years ago. You're maintaining friendships based on shared unconsciousness when you've outgrown the patterns that originally bonded you. This isn't about superiority, it's about psychological integrity. Your psyche simply won't let you betray your authentic development to maintain social comfort. Jung's journals reveal his own struggle. I can no longer pretend to be the proper Swiss psychiatrist when I have seen the depths that psychiatry refuses to acknowledge. The performance feels like death. Comment if you've experienced this exhaustion from environments requiring persona performance. I recognize the cost of psychological authenticity. The hermit phase, Jung's archetypal withdrawal. This withdrawal isn't pathological, it's archetypal. Every culture throughout history has recognized what Jung's anthropological research revealed as the hermit phase, a necessary stage of psychological and spiritual development. The hermit archetype appears universally because individuation requires periods of separation from collective influences. You can't integrate your shadow while others pressure you to maintain your nice persona. You can't discover your authentic voice while constantly adapting to others' expectations. Jung's own experience at Bollingen demonstrates this necessity. His years at the tower by the lake weren't vacation. They were psychological survival. He needed distance from collective consciousness to develop individual consciousness. He needed separation from others' projections to understand his own depths. Through analyzing hundreds of cases, Jung identified distinct phases that awakening people experience. Phase 1. Recognition. You begin noticing how much energy normal social interaction requires. You find yourself needing more alone time to process experiences. You start recognizing patterns in others that you're no longer willing to enable unconsciously. Phase 2. Selective disengagement. You become more discerning about which environments feel nourishing versus draining. You start declining obligations that require performing personas you've outgrown. You begin seeking others who operate from similar levels of awareness. Phase 3. Integration and return. After sufficient solitude, you re-engage with social environments, but from a fundamentally different position. You're no longer trying to fit in or maintain approval. You're offering authentic presence to those ready to receive it. What Jung's case studies reveal is crucial. The hermit phase isn't permanent escape. It's preparation. You're not abandoning society. You're developing something society needs but can't yet recognize. Jung's breakthrough insight was that everyone who undergoes genuine spiritual awakening follows this exact pattern: withdrawal, transformation, return. But they return changed. They can no longer participate unconsciously, but they can offer conscious alternatives to those ready for them. Dr. Heinrich Weber, one of Jung's analysans, disappeared from academic life for 18 months. Colleagues assumed he'd suffered a breakdown. He'd actually experienced a breakthrough. In solitude, he integrated insights about the human psyche that would have been impossible while maintaining his academic persona. When he returned, he revolutionized his field, but only after the necessary withdrawal period allowed complete integration. The return. How conscious people re-engage. The most crucial aspect of withdrawal is eventual re-engagement. Jung's clinical files document that authentic hermits don't stay gone forever. When they return, they've developed what Jung's notes describe as conscious participation, engagement without absorption. Jung's term border dwellers describes returned hermits perfectly, present in society but not consumed by it. They've learned to engage without losing themselves, to contribute without compromising their authenticity. Border dwellers operate from conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. They can attend the dinner party, work meeting, or family gathering, but they're no longer automatically pulled into collective dynamics. They might create businesses prioritizing employee well-being over profit maximization, develop art speaking to soul depths rather than surface entertainment, offer healing focused on root transformation rather than symptom management, build communities based on authentic connection rather than shared unconsciousness, pioneer lifestyle approaches serving both individual development and planetary health. Jung's correspondence reveals something fascinating. Conscious people become selectively visible after integration. They're invisible to those seeking unconscious validation, but clearly visible to those ready for authentic connection. This explains why awakened people often describe living in two worlds. They exist on society's margins while being deeply connected to others on similar developmental paths. Marcus, a business consultant who completed this cycle, describes it. I appear to participate in corporate culture normally, but I'm actually operating from completely different principles. I offer conscious leadership to those who recognize it while remaining invisible to those who would resist it. Instead of trying to awaken the masses, returned hermits focus on what Jung called conscious micro-communities, small groups committed to authentic development and genuine relationship. These communities manifest as professional networks based on integrity rather than advancement, friend groups committed to real conversation rather than social performance, spiritual circles focused on practical integration rather than escapist beliefs, family relationships transformed by authentic communication rather than role maintenance. If you found yourself naturally attracting more conscious connections, comment, "I'm building authentic community." The collective function, why society needs conscious hermits. Conscious withdrawal serves not just individual development, but collective evolution. Jung's sociological observations reveal that those disappearing aren't abandoning society, they're preparing something essential for it. Jung's research into group dynamics showed that consciousness operates contagiously, but only when fully integrated. Half-conscious people often create more unconsciousness by trying to wake up others prematurely, but fully individuated people naturally transmit awareness simply through their presence. When someone has genuinely completed their integration work, their very being demonstrates possibilities others haven't considered. They're not preaching or pushing, they're simply existing from a different level of awareness that makes alternative ways of being visible to those ready to see them. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Jung's anthropological studies revealed that awakened individuals serve as what we might call a cultural innovation laboratory, developing new forms of consciousness that mainstream culture isn't ready for, but will eventually need. During withdrawal periods, conscious people are pioneering relationship models that prioritize authenticity over performance, creating economic approaches that serve life rather than exploitation, exploring healing modalities, addressing root causes rather than symptoms, developing lifestyle approaches sustaining both individual and planetary well-being, building communication practices that honor both truth and compassion. When larger culture becomes ready for these innovations, the prototypes are already tested and available. Jung prophesied that humanity would face collective challenges requiring widespread psychological maturation. He believed individuals who withdrew during stable times to develop consciousness would become essential guides during periods of collective transition. We're witnessing this prediction now. Jung's analysis of cultural change identified that conscious withdrawal creates what biologists call evolutionary pressure,
on unconscious systems. When awakened, people stop participating in dysfunctional patterns. Those patterns either evolve or collapse. Organizations lose their most innovative employees to more conscious
alternatives. Relationships based on unconscious patterns dissolve when one person refuses to participate unconsciously. Political movements lose supporters who see through their psychological projections. This creates selection pressure for more conscious alternatives to emerge. The withdrawal isn't abandonment. It's the natural process encouraging cultural evolution toward greater awareness. Integration practices. How to navigate withdrawal consciously. For those experiencing the pull toward withdrawal, Jung's therapeutic notes provide specific practices to navigate this phase constructively rather than falling into isolation or spiritual inflation. Jung's case studies distinguish between healthy discernment about energy-draining environments and unhealthy judgment about people operating unconsciously. The key insight: everyone is exactly where they need to be in their developmental journey. When you feel superior to unconscious people, you're actually displaying unconsciousness yourself. True awareness recognizes that awakening happens on individual timelines and can't be forced. Practice asking, is my withdrawal coming from wisdom or from judgment? Am I preserving energy for authentic contribution, or am I avoiding the discomfort of human connection? Instead of complete social withdrawal, Jung's treatment notes recommend selective engagement, consciously choosing which environments and relationships support your development versus those that drain it. This protocol involves limiting time in environments requiring persona performance, seeking individuals and groups operating from similar awareness levels, creating boundaries around discussions, triggering unconscious projection patterns, investing energy in relationships that can handle your authentic self. Jung's therapeutic approach emphasized that withdrawal should be preparation for contribution, not permanent escape. During integration periods, focus on developing something you can eventually offer back to the collective. This might be healing practices that could help others navigate awakening, creative expressions that communicate consciousness in accessible ways, business models demonstrating how to operate from integrity, relationship skills showing how authentic connection works, wisdom about navigating psychological development challenges. Jung's patient records show that healthy withdrawal periods typically last 6 months to 3 years, depending on integration needs. Warning signs that withdrawal has become unhealthy include complete disinterest in human connection, developing superiority complexes about consciousness level, using spirituality to avoid practical life responsibilities, inability to relate to anyone not on a similar path, losing empathy for people struggling with unconscious patterns. Comment if you're consciously using withdrawal as preparation rather than escape. I'm integrating to serve authentically. The dangers when withdrawal becomes unhealthy. While Jung validated conscious withdrawal as necessary, his clinical observations also documented its shadow aspects. Spiritual awakening can become spiritual bypassing when used to avoid rather than engage with the full spectrum of human experience. Jung's psychiatric practice identified spiritual inflation as one of the primary dangers facing awakening individuals. When people mistake psychological development for superiority, they use consciousness as another form of ego protection, rather than genuine transcendence. Warning signs from Jung's case files include believing you're too evolved for normal human challenges like grief, anger, or fear, using spiritual concepts to avoid taking responsibility for practical life areas like finances, health, or relationships, developing contempt for people operating unconsciously instead of compassion, becoming addicted to being the most conscious person in any room, using withdrawal to avoid feedback that might challenge your self-image. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. This includes accepting that you're still human, still learning, still capable of unconscious behavior, even after significant development. Jung's therapeutic notes document cases where people became addicted to the safety and control of solitude, using withdrawal as avoidance of the challenging reality of human relationship. He termed this hermit neurosis, mistaking isolation for enlightenment. Healthy withdrawal energizes you for eventual re-engagement. Unhealthy withdrawal becomes progressively more isolating and leads to depression, anxiety, and disconnection from your own humanity. Jung strongly advocated for professional guidance during major psychological transitions. His letters to colleagues emphasized that if you're experiencing complete inability to function in normal social situations for extended periods, persistent feelings of superiority or alienation from all other humans, using spiritual concepts to justify avoiding all life responsibilities, depression, anxiety, or panic that doesn't improve with solitude and practice, grandiose beliefs about your spiritual mission or specialness. These may indicate the need for professional support to navigate awakening in a healthy way. Jung himself relied on colleagues and mentors throughout his own development process. Jung's clinical experience revealed that genuine individuation always leads back to human community, but from a more authentic position. If your awakening is making you less capable of love, connection, and service, something has gone wrong in the process. Jung taught patients to regularly evaluate, is my solitude making me more capable of authentic love and service, or is it making me more isolated and judgmental? Healthy conscious withdrawal feels like preparation and integration. Unhealthy withdrawal feels like escape and avoidance. The return path, re-engaging consciously. Jung's therapeutic records show that withdrawal prepares you for a fundamentally different kind of social engagement, one based on authenticity rather than performance, service rather than need, contribution rather than consumption. When you're ready to re-engage after integration, Jung's treatment protocols recommend a gradual process that honors both your development and others' readiness for authentic connection. Start with low-stakes interactions where you can practice being authentically yourself without pressure to perform or fix anyone. This might include conversations with strangers who have no expectations about who you should be, volunteer work where you can contribute without needing approval, creative communities where authentic expression is valued, professional contexts where your unique perspective adds value. Jung's case studies reveal that post-integration social engagement feels completely different because your motivation shifts from getting something, approval, validation, belonging, to offering something, presence, wisdom, authentic connection. This shift removes anxiety and performance pressure because you're no longer dependent on others' responses for self-worth. You can offer your authentic presence and let others decide whether they're ready to receive it. Rather than trying to change unconscious systems from within, Jung's observations show that awakened people often create alternative systems demonstrating different possibilities. Businesses prioritizing employee well-being and authentic contribution. Educational approaches honoring individual development paths. Communities based on mutual support rather than competition. Healing modalities addressing root causes rather than symptoms. Lifestyle approaches sustaining both personal and planetary health. Jung's research into group dynamics showed that conscious people create change not through activism or preaching, but through modeling alternative ways of being. When you operate from genuine awareness, you give others permission to explore their own authenticity. This creates what Jung called morphic resonance, changes in consciousness that spread through communities without direct teaching or persuasion. Your individual development contributes to collective development in ways you may never directly see. Jung's therapeutic insight was that today's hermits become tomorrow's wisdom teachers. People withdrawing now to develop consciousness are preparing to guide others through similar processes when the collective is ready for widespread awakening. Jung's final insight about conscious re-engagement is learning to sustain awareness while participating in imperfect systems. This requires clear boundaries about what you will and won't participate in unconsciously, skills for offering authentic presence without becoming overwhelmed by others' unconsciousness, support systems with others sharing your commitment to conscious living, regular practices helping you process and clear any unconscious material you pick up, remembering that your primary responsibility is maintaining your own consciousness, not awakening others. If you're learning to re-engage consciously after withdrawal, comment, "I choose conscious contribution over unconscious participation." The collective awakening vision. Jung's therapeutic vision wasn't individual enlightenment, but collective transformation, a gradual evolution of human consciousness that happens through individuals doing their inner work and then contributing their developments to the larger whole. Jung's research into group dynamics revealed that consciousness awakening follows what researchers now call critical mass dynamics. You don't need everyone to awaken for collective transformation to occur. You need a sufficient number of individuals operating from genuine awareness to create a tipping point. The people quietly stepping back from society to do their inner work aren't abandoning the collective. They're part of a natural process, preparing humanity for its next developmental phase. Conscious individuals serve as bridges between the current cultural paradigm and emerging possibilities. They demonstrate through their lives that different ways of being are possible, practical, and sustainable. This isn't about creating utopian communities separate from the world, but about showing how consciousness can be lived within existing systems while gradually transforming those systems through authentic participation. Jung's studies of cultural change showed that transformation happens over generations. The parents who withdraw to develop consciousness raise children who grow up assuming that authentic living and conscious relationships are normal possibilities. These children become adults who create institutions, relationships, and cultural norms based on psychological maturity rather than unconscious patterns. Today's hermits are preparing the foundation for tomorrow's conscious culture. Jung's clinical approach emphasized that each person must choose their own relationship with this collective awakening process. Some are called to withdraw and develop consciousness in solitude. Others are called to transform systems from within. Still others are called to build bridges between conscious and unconscious communities. None of these paths is superior to the others. The collective needs individuals operating consciously from all positions. Hermits developing wisdom, culture workers transforming institutions, bridge builders facilitating communication, and pioneers modeling new possibilities. If you've been feeling the pull to withdraw, to step back from unconscious social participation, Jung's research suggests you're recognizing that humanity needs people who've done their inner work to help navigate the challenges and opportunities of our collective awakening. Your withdrawal isn't avoidance of life, it's preparation for a more authentic version of it. You're not abandoning humanity, you're developing something humanity needs but doesn't yet know how to create. Remember Jung's insight that consciousness withdrawal is temporary recharging, allowing awakened individuals to return and offer authentic connection. Your stepping back isn't escape, it's evolution. Not just personal evolution, but participation in humanity's gradual awakening to more conscious ways of being. Comment below, I trust the timing of my consciousness development if you're ready to honor your authentic path, whether that involves withdrawal, re-engagement, or something uniquely your own. Your journey matters, not just for you, but for all of us, walking the path toward greater consciousness and authentic human connection. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.